Britain's democracy is in retreat, despite the ousting of Boris Johnson and a new report finds. We're going to have a look at this from Byline Times, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here. You have a look at this article from Byline Times, which I'll put the link in the description for you guys. I think this is an interesting one. I've had a bit of a read of it already, but I think I'll reread it again for you guys. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it. So the headline from the article is UK democracy is in retreat, despite the ousting of Boris Johnson, a new report finds. According to the research, ministers have pushed through changes to Britain's political system that poses considerable risk for the country's democratic future. I think it's fair to say, given what we have learned from what we established, not just from news itself, but from what other YouTubers have saying, there's definitely an erosion of British democracy, that is for sure, and we have less of a voice than we've ever had before. I think that is a pretty obvious thing to say, which is why I'm one of many of those who are in stronger favour of proportional representation within the electoral system. I am in agreement with Labour when it comes to abolishing the House of Lords as well, for example. They're just two ideas of many more. Also, I'm in favour of a universal basic income. But let's have a read into it, and I'll give my thoughts along the way. Britain's democratic institutions are under huge strain, and the problem is getting worse. Amid repeated assaults on the integrity of elections, citizens' political rights, and laying in politics, according to a new report. The research launched today by Political Reform UK Unlock Democracy and Compass sounds the alarms about the long-term decline of UK democracy, exposing a systematic decoupling of people and power. I do agree with that. There has been an erosion of that. I mean, just by some of the new protest bills that have come through. You know, the rights to be able to being able to speak out, that's being eroded in our country as well. So that's definitely there for us to be aware of. It comes as a separate new research from the Institute of Public Policy Research think tank finds almost 3 in 5 voters back large-scale reforms of Britain's political system, with just 1 in 17 people, that's 6%, opposing change. Only 1 in 3 people trust Parliament to act in the best interest of people in the UK as things stand. Yeah, trust has been completely destroyed within the British political system. It's not so much a case of just the last 13 years of Conservative rule. It has been the failures of Labour as well. People are tired of having to pick between two political parties as well. We've seen over the last decade or so the rise of the Green Party, particularly in England. And I think they seem to come across really strong. There's an interview from the deputy leader. I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to check out as well. It was from Navarro Media. I know some people are skeptical about their content, but I think it's well worth listening to kind of get a different perspective in the political landscape from a different party leader, because you don't hear a lot about Lib Dems and Greens or even Reform. Well, you probably don't want to talk about Reform, but we always hear about the Conservatives and Labour. We don't hear enough about some of the other parties, and I think it's well worth checking out. But this one here about 1 in 3 people trusting Parliament to act in the best interest of people, that's not a surprise at all. The confidence is shot. You know, not just Brexit, but the handling of the pandemic, the cost of living crisis we're in, the simple case of blame game rather than apologising and not taking responsibility. I think that's on both parties not taking responsibilities when it comes to their actions. Yes, of course, the Conservatives have been in power for the last 13 years and they must take their fair share. That people are angry. People want their lives improved and they want to know what's being done about it. And I think that's, people want to know. People, when it comes to the next general election, people want to know, what are you going to do to make my life better? They don't want to just hear policies. They want to hear what they're going to generally do, not just on a national level, but from a local level, what they're going to do to improve their lives. And I think that's going to play a crucial role in the upcoming by-elections as well. A rising demand for change. So people living in the north of England and in South Wales are most likely to support change. Focus groups held by the IPPR found that issues such as the voting system to elect MPs, the unelected House of Lords, and the lack of real devolution of 2 local areas emerged as the citizens top of citizens' democratic concerns. Yeah, we keep talking about levelling up the north and doing more, and there hasn't really, has it really happened? Now I'm coming from someone who lives in the south, lives in just outside London, so and you know the question you need to ask yourself if you're someone living up the north is that not just the last 30 years, but the last 20-30 years, where you've lived or in around areas of where you live, has your life gotten better? If it hasn't gotten better, whose responsibility for that? Has it been the same political party that you've had, or has it been you've had different political parties and there's just not been that change? What would you want done differently? You know, these are questions that I think deservedly need to be answered. Damningly, when asked to suggest one word to summarise their perception of the state of democracy in the UK, participants used the words such as chaos, dysfunctional, corrupt and broken. Yep, I 100% agree with those terms. The report argues that politicians need to overcome the temptation to downplay democratic reform when considering a programme for government. The IPPR authors argue that reforming Britain's political system is central to fixing Britain's centralised economic and tackling wider issues that matter to voters. Yeah, totally agree with that assessment. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has recently been accused of shying away from the overhaul of the UK's political system after party insiders hinted that he could appoint around 100 peers to the under-elected House of Lords, admitted that Starmer would not introduce proportional representation for UK elections, and refused to commit to repealing new anti-protest laws. Yeah, this is the problem. You know, I'm getting the more and more I hear about the Labour leader and the things that are happening within the Labour Party, the more I just feel like they're just becoming just another right wing, and it's very worrying. You know, PR is needed, and if he's not prepared to do that, why should you know? For me, we need to, in order for change to happen for the better, we have to change our electoral system. And if we change our electoral system, that means we, as a public, get more of a say on people that we get to elect. Not just from two political parties, but from all political parties, independent, third, fourth, fifth parties, we get more of a say. And it's less power into the hands of just two parties and into more. Proportional representation is vital. Yes, we have a cost of living crisis which needs prioritising, and an NHS as well. But the fact that Labour are kind of moving away from that is incredibly worrying. And at the moment, I'm starting to feel like, you know, if I at the moment, as of right now, I'm not going to vote Labour, based on unless obviously when the general election comes and I hear what they're playing, what their pledges are on that, then maybe my viewpoint may change. But as of right now, I have no intention of voting Labour, especially from interviews and things. They don't seem that united as well, which is a worrying thing as well. Doesn't mean I'm going to vote Conservative, that's for sure. In some of the most egregious threats to Democrat integrity in recent years, such as the Partygate scandal over number 10 rule breaking during coronavirus restrictions, or the 2021 lobbying scandal surrounding former Conservative MP Owen Paterson, existing mechanisms have obviously been able to enforce a degree of accountability. But more worrying for the Compass Unlock Democracy report authors is that ministers have continued to push through the changes to Britain's political system that pose considerable risks to the UK's democratic future. Yeah. The deluge of damaging changes. In 2021, the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that it had never been more vital to strengthen democracy at home and stand up for our principles abroad. But he followed up with that with a suit of changes brand dangerous to democracy by leading academics and political reform groups. Johnson's government introduced the mandatory voter ID, whereby all voters must now bring a form of voter identification or not be allowed to vote. With around 2 million people in Britain lacking the right voter ID, has made it much more difficult for people to vote, the authors said. Yeah, the official numbers have still yet to be... There was a couple of numbers, I think, say up to 10,000 people in the last local election couldn't be able to vote, but that can't be... It could be more, simply because not everybody was recorded in that. They had it in most constituents, but not everybody was able to record those who came and turned up and not been able to vote. The Electoral Commission found last week that at least 14,000 people were denied a vote as a result of changing May's local elections in England. So they're saying 14,000. It could potentially be more, but that's just an estimate. I'm surprised that actually it's not higher. It'd be interesting to see what happens at the general election at that number. At the same time, ministers face accusations that have compromised the essential principle of elections, that the watchdog responsible for overseeing elections, the Electoral Commission, should be independent of government. Yes, it should. Totally agree with that. Last year, the government passed the Elections Act, which allows ministers to set the strategy for the Electoral Commission and pack the body overseeing it with government representatives. Meanwhile, clampdowns on the right to protest and strike and conscious attempts to weaken the power of independent regulators and the judiciary compounded existing failings within UK democracy, the report says. Again, Rishi Sunak has ramped up these changes, passing the Public Order Act shortly before the King's coronation is made, an event which saw dozens of peaceful protesters arrested, including from the anti-monarch group Republic. The arrest triggered outrage from opposition parties, though Labour was largely mute. Yeah, Labour were quite silent on it. And one of the people that was protested was actually one of the people that was not protested, but someone that was actually arrested was actually a monarchist who basically just happened to be passed by and she got arrested just for passing by. That's not if you're not concerned about that. Like if you're not part of a protest and you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can find yourself arrested for doing absolutely nothing wrong. Broken politics. In particular, the report notes that the tendency of the UK's first-past-the-post electoral system to give outright powers to a single party on the minority of the votes allow governments to ride roughshod over institutions and the norms of democracy. Campaigners have long called for a switch to a form of proportional representation. Yes. Whereby seats in Parliament could more closely reflect how the public actually votes. Yes. There's no reason why not to do this. The report concludes that in the absence of codified constitution, citizens' freedoms cannot be guaranteed, with the government able to slash rights to vote and protest with little oversight. Yeah, exactly. Former Liberal Democrat MP Tom Brake, the director of Unlock Democracy, said, "People look at our politics and they are not impressed. With each new sleaze scandal, faith in politics falls. People rightly feel that there is one rule for them and another for the rest of us. Amid government assaults on our freedoms, with the future increasingly uncertain, we need a written constitution to hardwire greater protections into the UK democracy." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just seeing the scandals after scandals after scandals from the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was just so demoralising as a British citizen, and you're like thinking, like, this is the government, this is our government, this is our Prime Minister, and you're seeing scandal after scandal after scandal, regardless of what side of the spectrum you're on. That's pretty embarrassing on the world stage. You know, it's embarrassing. Citizens at all levels of government need to be actively empowered with genuine devolution to local communities, and a better electoral system in which everyone votes counts. Yeah, people's votes could become irrelevant with this first-past-the-post system makes voting irrelevant in some areas. That's the problem with it. He added, "We need to get serious about guaranteeing our political and civil freedoms before it's too late." For Neil Lawston, director of Compass, "Our faith in politics is at an all-time low, but the system won't heal itself." He believes we need to take action to modernise and deepen our democracy to avert this worrying democratic backsliding, and that the report should serve as a serious wake-up call. It shows that across the board our democracy is increasingly frail. Backsliding. Several major international reports have recently pointed to signs of democratic backsliding across the globe. Yeah, this has been a trend that's happening not just here but around the world. The Vanities of Democracy (VM) project concluded that the latest report that 35 years of democratic advances have been wiped out, with the levels of democracy enjoyed by the average global citizen in 2022 returning to levels last seen by 1986. In its Global State of Democracy Report 2022, International IDEA reported that half of the world's democracies were in retreat, and that a number of countries moving towards authoritarianism has doubled in the past 6 years. In addition, research from the Electoral Integrity Project suggests that many established democracies have seen a decline in the quality of their elections. That's the undermining of the elections. Today's report was commissioned by part of the Powering Up, a joint Unlock Democracy and Compass project funded by Joshua Rowntree Reform Trust. Unlock Democracy is a not-for-profit organisation which campaigns for a vibrant, inclusive democracy that puts power in the hands of its people. It is also calling for a new written constitution. Cross-party membership group Compass is also calling for a new democratic settlement that emphasises collaboration, participation and alliance building. A spokesperson for Make Votes Matter said, with Labour looking increasingly likely to form the next government, this task of reform may fall to them. Complacency is not an option. An interactive map published on IPPR's website along its new reports can reveal the extent of the support of constituency across England, Scotland and Wales. I'll put whatever links that I can do for them. I'll have a look if I can, and I'll put them in the description for you guys. But the UK democracy being under threat, guys, I think that's definitely for certain. Our democracy is eroding. We don't know how long it's got. I mean, it's looking likely that Labour will be in power. The more I think about it, the more I feel that Labour are not going to get a majority. And I feel like we're heading towards a hung parliament. The more they step back from their pledges that they made originally, the more that they twist some of their ideas. The fact that proportional representation isn't even being mentioned by those at the top in Labour, it feels like to me, they feel it's in the bag, but where is the give me a reason to vote for you? That's kind of the message I would have. Our democracy is fading, if it's not already gone. And we need to start with that proportional representation. We need to abolish the House of Lords. People need to be able to make ends meet. There's so much more that needs to be done. But what do you guys think of this article? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe as always, and I will catch you guys very, very soon.